President Obama working on the State of the Union address. Did I hear Cedra filling in for the Brent today? And Cedra, did I hear that the president is now going to have energy cookies? Is that a pseudonym for something? Because I'm kind of getting worried about the State of the Union address he's working on. He's working really hard. I always worry when presidents, especially Democrats, work hard. Not about R's or D's, but just follow me here. Carter worked really hard. I think Carter was one of the hardest working presidents ever. I don't think we have to fear that with President Obama, the amount of golf he has to play. Yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen. And I realize the president's the president all the time, so I'm really not a guy who's criticizing the president for playing golf. I always thought those were kind of surface criticisms, cosmetic as opposed to substantive. But if they play into a larger theme, especially in the theme that the president is always talking about inequality and the 99% and the 1%, and is that going to be part of the State of the Union? Oh, yeah. We're going to have our own State of the Union here Tuesday night with the preview, and then Wednesday and on nothingbutTruth.com. But you need to go to the Facebook to learn about that. That will be listed on Sunday. A lot there. So what are we going to talk about? Well, perhaps we should talk about Iran. Boring. How is it boring? How is it boring? Well, the reason we're going to play these clips for you is because they're going to become part of history. And people are going to look back and go, you can't be that ripping stupid. It's true. They're going to say, what were you thinking? After any real crisis, you get a real large dose of not liberalism as we know it today, but really after a crisis and you come out of a crisis and you've tried all the liberal plans to solve it and it exacerbates it, you get a dose of conservatism. Conservatism with a Christian worldview right here, yours truly, and on AFR Talk. By the way, that factors into what Mike Huckabee, Governor Huckabee, talked about the other day. Again, we'll get to it. But Iran's nuke deal and how the Iranians are saying things that Jay Carney says, no, you don't get it. You don't understand. They're going to dismantle. We got the 6-month deal, and it's comprehensive. And I'm not going to answer if I'm going to go around Congress in order to stop and prevent them from passing more sanctions or lifting sanctions. I'm not going to answer that because I'm not really ready to. That was on Wednesday. So it's Friday, and this was Thursday. And here's the president going, Ed Henry, one of the few journalists, there are a few journalists there in the White House press pool, but challenging Jay Carney on the substance of what the agreement says and what the Iranians have said. Roll it.
Based on President Rouhani saying we're not going to destroy any centuries.
Well, I think the quote was, again, I don't speak Farsi, but and again, it matters less to us what they say than what they do. But we are not is different from we will not, and there is absolutely no disagreement that when it comes to
not under any will you destroy centrifuges? Not under any circumstances.
Iran will be required under a comprehensive solution to agree to strict limits and constraints on all aspects of its nuclear program, to include the dismantlement of significant portions of its nuclear infrastructure. Now, we are just at the beginning of this process. If Iran fails to comply with the agreements it's made, or if Iran fails to reach agreement with the P5+1 on a comprehensive solution, we will be in a situation where we have to consider alternate steps to fulfill the president's commitment that Iran cannot be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. The point of the negotiations is to see whether or not Iran is serious about coming into compliance and meeting its obligations with its international commitments.
The point is, don't you get it? We're smarter. We understand things, but Iran for 30 years hasn't done anything to let you believe they will move forward and abide by. We already have 5 actions against them in regard to what we just passed or what we're going forward with. So why are they going to comply now? What is that? I know I'm a little thick because I look at the blood and the butcher's bill of Iran, the Iranian government, and I see regime change. I'd like to take the regime out. Personally, that's what I think the policy should be. I think Rouhani and the rest of the mulocracy gone. Bye-bye. The Iranian people, I believe in, And I believe we need to empower them. But they rose up and got slaughtered in 2009 because we have mutual respect for other people's election processes. We talk to elections and dignity as opposed to liberty and freedom and actually supporting people. And then you get people accusing you wanting to invade Iran. Wrong answer. I just want to help the people who want to be free. I don't want to cut their funding. I don't want to do that. But if it's based on Islam, it will not. No, it won't be a Jeffersonian democracy, but we got to start someplace. And a good place to start is the removal of the Iranian regime. Man, if our president actually talked less about equality and more about freedom, if the president truly used the power of the bully pulpit, not to, excuse me, I was about to use a naughty word, whine about, I apologize, folks. Don't know what got over me. I'll blame it on my injured ankle. So, if he wasn't whining about Fox News and talk radio all the time, maybe he could use the power of the bully pulpit to actually address how the Iranian people are enslaved and how the system that they live under, just like North Korea, actually not just like North Korea, but systems like a theocracy that subjugate their own people are bound to fail. So they need an outside enemy, and that enemy is the United States, but then you'd start thinking, why would the Iranians ever comply with what they're doing now? They got Russia and China on their side. They're going to still work with them. I mean, come on. So you really start realizing just how ridiculous this whole process is. Tell me this. I want to jump to clip number 10. Number 10. Because Ed Henry was merely repeating what the so-called moderate Iranian president said, Rouhani. So maybe we should listen to Rouhani and see if we can believe Jay Carney, who obviously has stock in Tums, because how else do you do that job and look yourself in the mirror? But I digress. That's a personal attack. No, it's a reality, because when you lie to people, it would probably come in and start impacting you unless you're so deceived. And that could be true. Dr. Crane. Roll it.
So in the context of nuclear technology, particularly of research and development and peaceful nuclear technology, we will not accept any limitations. And in accordance with the Parliament law, in the future, we're going to need 20,000 megawatts of nuclear-produced electricity, and we're determined to obtain the nuclear fuel for the nuclear installation at the hands of our Iranian scientists. And we are going to follow on this path.
So there will be no destruction of centrifuges, of existing centrifuges?
Not under any circumstances. Not under any circumstances.
What does that mean? Not under any circumstances. Why are they saying that? Well, the reason they're saying all these things, the foreign minister Zahari said it, and Rouhani said it, was because for domestic consumption, which begged the question, and we'll jump to Ed Henry again, asking Jay Carney. Jay Carney's like, oh yeah, they're saying all this stuff for domestic consumption. They're just doing that to please their base back home. Ed Henry, roll it.
Community.
On that question, when you continue to say that on their nuclear comments that they're just making these comments for domestic political consumption, CNN is broadcast outside of Iran, right? You could confirm.
Yeah, I've seen it here.
Aren't they also sending a message to you, to the president, to the U.S.? It's not just domestic political consumption if they're talking to a broader audience.
Ed, what I can tell you is that we are looking at what the Iranians are actually doing. Are they complying with the very specific commitments they made in the Joint Plan of Action? And as I mentioned earlier to Jim, representing both CNN and CNN International here.
It's funny. It's funny. Brutal killers who hold Americans hostage, who hold men of faith hostage, American pastors hostage. Yeah. It's funny because the Iranian government captures and slaughters American soldiers. It's funny because they're fostering unrest through terrorism in the greater Middle East, but specifically Syria. It's funny because they have a terrorist organization known as Hezbollah, who directly has, obviously, American blood on their hands. 1983, we can go through 1998. We can do that. It's funny because because we want to talk about their domestic. They've changed because President Obama has shown himself to be just such a nice guy. And you know what? George Bush made him angry. He was always talking war, and we don't want to do that because we have a juvenile, infantile view of the world that we actually ascribe values to people that don't have them. And then we talk about how much we love the soldiers and how much we want to protect the soldiers. Well, the reality is if you did, you'd first off change the rules of engagement and talk about victory as opposed to leaving. And the other thing you would do would be to make sure that less likely that we'd have to use the American soldier to achieve what we want to achieve, which is the fall of the Iranian government. And there are many steps to doing that. But first and foremost, you articulate what we stand for, Mr. President, what we believe in, much like Reagan did with the Evil Empire speech. And then you develop plans for regime change. And that's gotten a dirty name because somehow that is equated to what happened in Iraq. And the Democrats put American national security on the altar of politics and lied about President Bush lying. And we have given back the gains that we've had through regime change in Iraq. Some of them. But again, I digress. The reason this is a big deal, because history, we're going to look at this and we're going to say, what were they thinking? Why would he do this? But Chamberlain came back in peace in our time. Hey, so is Czechoslovakia Israel? No. And that's a good thing. Thank you, Jesus. All right. On the flip side, we've got Mike Huckabee and Chuck Schumer. Two speeches, very different responses. Brain Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on. Say it with me now. AFR Talk.